And welcome back. Now, as we know, it is wage negotiation season, and some public sector unions are still mulling over the 1.5% wage offer that was tabled by government during wage negotiations this past weekend. Now, the two sides are scheduled to meet again today to continue these talks, but the unions say that they are still consulting their members about this offer, and they are also in no rush to give a response either way. And the offer comes after government had initially struck to its 0% wage increase position, and that was since the crucial wage negotiations began. And then, while it is nowhere near the 7% increase that the unions are demanding, economists have described government's move as sensible. It is now up to the unions, of course, to decide whether to accept or to reject this offer. Claude Naiker is the collective bargaining manager for the PSA, and Mike Shingange is Cosatu's first deputy president, and they join us now. But I must also just indicate that we did contact the ministry, and unfortunately they were unable to join us, but said that they will release a comprehensive statement in this regard. But to take this conversation forward, Claude Naiker and Mike Shingange, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, your viewers.
Mike, let me start with you. Government has offered 1.5%. That's the offer on the table at the moment. What is your general reaction to what has happened thus far?
No, what has happened thus far is that, as you correctly said, government started with a 0% budget. In other words, there was no off. Government started with attacking the existing collective agreement that have been signed over the past 20 years, wanting to take those allowances or those benefits to augment what they called the fiscal deficit. Government wanted to take a pay progression from workers. So all of those has been pushed back by labor collectively to a point where now government is now moved away from the 0%. Government has now moved away from attacking the existing collective agreements in the form of taking away those allowances. So that's why now we think that which government is starting to talk is something that we can now begin to say to the workers, this is what government is raising, unlike the one that they were raising before.
Claude, from your side as a PSA, what do you make of that move that government has done in terms of moving from zero, which we have been hearing for quite some time, to now actually putting some percentage offer on the table?
Sakina, yes, once again, very good morning to you. The PSA is in a slightly different position because when wage negotiations deadlocked on the 23rd, we embarked on a facilitation process, and when we started 3 days into the facilitation process, nothing was forthcoming, so the PSA had no option but to declare a dispute. So we've been excluded from the facilitation process, but to the rest of Labour, the offer, the presentation was made yesterday with a 1.5% and a 978 rand gratuity. I think what we don't understand is that majority of the public servants do qualify for the 1.5% currently. If you are performing well and satisfactory, you will qualify for the 1.5%. So there's nothing new that is on the table with the exception on the 978 rand. From early reaction from our members, I think it's going to be a very difficult pill to swallow or something for us to sell to them, bearing in mind against the backdrop that they haven't received a salary increase from last year. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult to actually try and convince them. As I said, the 1.5% for majority of the public servants, they already qualify for that in terms of a performance. If you're performing satisfactory, is what we commonly refer to as a pay progression in public service.
Mike, just coming to that 1.5%, is this across the board, or is this going to be like a phased approach, pay progression? How is this actually going to work, or is it just flat rate 1.5% across the board?
Yes, in fact, Leon, at the risk of negotiating on the media like the minister have done before, the 1.5% is actually not a new offer, as Claude is correctly saying. What is happening here is that the 1.5% is actually now defended or protected. This is a percentage that government was looking at taking away from workers in order to use it as a salary increase. We have successfully defended that to say that there's no way you're going to take this a pay progression which guarantees a notch movement of workers, which workers, all of them, if their performance, they qualify. So it's not actually another new offer. The one that is a new offer, something else, like I said, we would not want our members to hear this thing necessarily from the media, because we've committed that we want 14 days to consult them. We're starting today. But the 1.5% now, I must answer your question directly, it's going to be given to every public servant, irrespective of whether you performed, as Claude is saying, or not. Because indeed, the way people that are on the personal notches who will not qualify for 1.5%, the offer that is on the table now, that is going to be across the board, it's going to be pensionable, it's going to guarantee a forward movement of public servants.
And that 14-day period for consultation with your members, have you started already? And also, how long is the negotiation process still open for?
The negotiation process is still proceeding in a form of facilitation. In other words, the facilitation is supposed to end tomorrow. But we think that because we have asked for 14 days to report and get a mandate from the members on what is on the table now, we will come back. The 14 days consultation has already started. Our unions are moving with their structures, bargaining forums, provincial congresses, and everything to make sure that they consult and get a mandate, so that after the 14 days they can come back and comprehensively respond to the employer. But remember that in the package of the demands, there are other issues that include housing allowance and many other things. Those negotiations are still taking place. What we are taking to members now is that which government is able to offer on the table now, that we are going to get a mandate from members.
And Claude, from your side as PSA, as you said, you'd already opted for conciliation. So please just give us an update of where you are in your process.
Well, we in conciliation mode now, where there's a period of 30 days in which we need to reach a settlement, failure which the commissioner will issue a certificate and we'll be entitled to embark on industrial action. We obviously anticipate that the employee will present the same offer to us, albeit in a different process. So, as I said, if that offer does come to us, like Mike said, we'll also have to take it to our members, and they will have to decide whether it's a feasible or it's a good enough offer to accept. If it's accepted by our members, and if the rest of organized labor accepts it, then obviously there might be some agreement on the table. Failing which, we are a mandate-driven organization. If they don't give us the mandate, then it's a different option altogether.
But as things stand right now, what are your members willing to accept? Have you pulsed them on that as yet?
Well, look, the offer, although it hasn't made formally in the bargaining council, it's out there. A lot of members are familiar with what's on the table. As I said, from the PSA, from initial reaction, it's not looking very good. It's a far cry from what we have initially presented as early as 1st of March. As Mike said, there's a number of demands. Housing allowance is one of the key demands that we have made. Public servants are finding it extremely difficult to try and obtain a loan from a financial institution with the money that they're earning in order to secure a loan. So one of the issues that we are actually tabling there is to try and utilize the pension fund as a guarantor to try and obtain a loan. Those are one of the key demands that we have put on the table. It hasn't been discussed. And in the draft proposal presentation, whatever you want to call it, none of those demands are there except for the 1.5% and the gratuity amount, as Mike has explained.
Mike, just coming back to you, there's also this 978 Rand gratuity that's been put on the table that would be paid, a sweetener, if you will. How have you guys responded to that?
We have not responded. We are taking it to our members. In fact, that money comes to a particular percentage, which we're not saying it now here. But that's what we're taking to our members. So we have not responded at all. We'll only respond after 14 days, starting from today, when we are consolidated the mandates coming from various unions and various structures of our country.
So just for our clarity, how is that meant to work? Is it something that's going to be included or excluded from a member's salaries once that is decided upon?
Well, what the 978 basically in the presentation entails is that it's a gratuity amount that's going to be paid on a monthly basis for a 12-month period. That obviously is non-pensionable. It's a separate amount from your basic salary, which entails that it's non-pensionable. Generally, your salary is pensionable, where a portion of that is taken and put into the pension fund. Unfortunately, the 978 that is currently being offered is a non-pensionable gratuity amount. So it won't add up to your pension, or it won't increase your pension savings that yet. So this might pose a problem for those that are nearing retirement, where they will get a gratuity amount, but it doesn't announce your pension fund at all. So I think this might be a problem for those at the tail end of their careers in the public service, as opposed to those that are just starting out now in the public service. So we need to convince them, if it's going to be the case, that this is either a good or a bad offer, but members will have to decide at the end of the day.
So I'm curious to know why it has been structured as such. What was the explanation, Mike?
Well, you remember that I just said that we're coming from a 0% or a zero increase or anything at all that government was prepared to offer. So if you like, the explanation is that that is something that they've moved away from, and then this is what they can propose for now. But like Claude is saying, it's not something that we were prepared to listen to explanations. We're taking it to our members. For the members, they must interrogate it. They must calculate whether it's good or bad for them. The issue is that we've reached a stage where it can no longer be the negotiators that take decisions on this matter. It was easy for us to reject the zero increase. It was easy for us to reject the taking away of the 1.5% pay progression. It was easy for us to reject the attacking of the collective agreement that exists now, taking the allowances away in order to augment it on the salary increase. But at this point in time, where we are, it is where usually in terms of our traditions, we then put all these things to our members, and the members, they speak for themselves, and then they give us mandate, what is it that we must go back and say.
And just to reiterate, in terms of some of the demands that you've made, quite apart from the salary increments, let's talk to a few of the others. And which ones would you say for your members are non-negotiable? Let me start with you, Claude, and then I'll come to you, Mike.
Mike alluded to the fact about the housing. I think that's a very critical element, because a lot of public servants currently, as I said earlier, are struggling to make ends meet. So on the basic salary that they earn, especially at the lower end, a number of them that we've taken a survey do not own a proper dwelling or a property in which they can build a home as such. So the key element in this demand is that we're trying to use the pension savings as a guarantor. In other words, an employee can go to a bank and say, listen, this is how much I have in my pension fund. Can I use this as a guarantee to try and secure a loan? I think that's one of the key demands for us, apart from the salary increases. There are a number of other demands as well, like for mothers that are currently have just given birth to kids, to try and provide creche facilities at the institution so that they can come to work with the peace of mind that their kids are safe and they can also be productive at work. A lot of these parents, some of them are single parents, have to incur additional costs to try and find caregivers or put them in creches and put them in other facilities, which obviously adds to their financial burden. That's another key demand that we were actually looking at to try and assist our members with.
Mike, from your side?
Yes, in addition to the one Claude has just raised, we are also demanding the permanent employment of the community health care workers. As we know that there are a number of thousands of battalions of workers in this country who are performing public health functions who are not employed by the Department of Health, particularly in this period of pandemic. These are the ones who are doing mass screening and testing in the communities and also making sure that they care for those who can't go to hospitals to get their medication. We are demanding that those must be actually be made permanent because the task they are performing is of a permanent nature. The second thing is that in addition to the difficulties of the housing affordability, there's also the medical affordability too, where the government employee medical schemes that is so exorbitantly expensive that it's so unaffordable to majority of the public servants. We want that thing to be improved too. And then lastly, you still have in this country the public servants who are at salary level 1, 2, and 3. Something that is very ridiculous in terms of the salary gap that is existing. When you look at somebody who's at salary level 16 or somebody who's a parliamentarian earning some millions home every year, while the other workers are serving the same public service, but are taking just the 50,000 per year. We're wanting those salary levels to be abolished so that the entry level in this country should start from at least a level 4, so that we are at least uplifting the standard of living, including closing the apartheid wage gap that we have inherited since 1994.
So you say starting at level 4, what is level 4?
It's a salary level.
Yes, but how much is that at level 4?
Sorry?
How much is that at level 4? If that's the entry level, how much are you saying it should be?
Well, I may not be able to give a salary figure now because we do it in terms of annual salary. But all I'm saying is that since 2007, we've been demanding that salary level 1, 2 must be abolished because it's ridiculous, because it perpetuates the salary inequalities in this country. We think at least a level that could be acceptable, but be starting from salary level 4 without giving you how much is that.
So just to
conclude, very important. Yes, sorry, Sakina. Another very important aspect of one of the demands, a lot of employees are currently on contract, and they've been on contract for a number of years. And organized labor has demanded that these employees, in order to secure employment, that they should be employed on a permanent basis. Going on a year-to-year on a contract basis doesn't provide much security. People are unable to move on with their lives. With the backdrop that they are on a contract basis. So one of those key demands is that we are trying to convince government to say that these contract workers must be employed on a permanent basis as well.
So in conclusion, just from both of you once again, government is saying that they simply do not have the money. So moving from here on forward, what is your stance going to be, given that we are told that the fiscus simply cannot afford an increase to the public servants' wage bill, but they have moved from that 0%. So is that something that you are taking into consideration at all? Claude, first you and then Mike.
Look, we will always be sympathetic to the economic situation, and obviously the pandemic has exacerbated the whole issue. But I think if you look at our track record and the media statements that we've made, government has not gotten a hold of the corruption and maladministration in the public service. We've been mooting this idea for decades now to say that you need to take control of your finances. Yes, there's a lot of noise being made as to public servants earning above inflation, but those were a result of collective agreements that we signed years ago, hard negotiations that we signed with the state, where they budgeted and they've indicated that public servants can earn this amount of money, or we can pay the salary increases. I think if all of us, including the public servants as well, can see there's some effort on the government to try and control maladministration, corruption, surely we can negotiate in a sense that we can say, yes, we are sympathetic to the government. We've seen a lot of moves made to say, listen, yes, we're trying to control this, we're trying to control that, but there's no convictions, no recouping of these monies that's lost as a result of maladministration and corruption that we've recouped to say, listen, we've saved this amount of money, this is now what we have done. There's genuine efforts to try and control this, but I don't think there's sustained efforts or even a concerted effort to try and do that. But to answer the question, yes, we are sympathetic, and we will continue to negotiate till we try and find a settlement with with the state. But we can only take so much. Collective bargaining is such that you come to a stage where if neither party wants to move, if the employer is not going to improve its offer, we'll have to try and find another avenue. And unfortunately, in collective bargaining arena, industrial action is the only option at the end of the state. We don't like to go that route, but sometimes we are forced to actually engage that route.
Mike Shingange?
Look, one of the rules of engagements in negotiation is that when there is a good faith engagement, you are able to open up your books in terms of what you can and you cannot afford. And then the other party is able to also give alternatives. And that is what we have been able to do so far, to be able to move government from the 0% and from attacking the other agreements. So we have been able to show alternatives where we think we can find money, and we'll continue to do that. Because one of the things, Sakina, that you must understand is that it's not, the government at the moment is only attacking the public servant in as far as the ones that are found in the SABC is concerned. But I'm not saying anything about everybody else who's getting money from the same public purse, including the ones in parliament, including the one in municipalities, including the one in SOEs. All of those are not being asked to sacrifice a thing in order to make sure that we save the fiscus. So those are some of the areas that we are looking at. But like Claude said, there's a lot of money that gets missing every year that the Auditor General says to us, billions and billions get unaccounted for. There's no plan of either following that money or at least stopping the leakages that is happening. So those are some of the things that we're putting on the table, that it can be the workers that are asked to tighten the belt and pay for the sins that they did not commit. We were not part of the decision that were taken to get our country into where it is now. So, but when we're on the table, we're able to raise those things.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for your engagement this morning. And that, of course, Mike Shingange, who's the first deputy president of Cosatu, and also Claude Naiker, who is a collective bargaining manager for the PSA, talking about the 1.5% wage offer that government has currently put on the table. Time now for your news with Leanne.